Hello and welcome to chit-chat at the Fronchard. We are almost to the tail end of our Love Is series looking at 1 Corinthians, and this week we looked at love does not keep record of wrongs and love does not delight in evil, which I feel like were kind of hard ones to get in and decide what they meant.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Because it's a lot of like, what exactly is he trying to say here?
Right. Like what was Paul's intention, or what did he want us to take away
Right.
from including that in his list?
Mm-hmm. Right. And why? Why would he even include it?
Yeah, so let's start with does not keep a record of wrongs. I loved the tail end, to go to the tail end of your blog post first. I love when you talk about working it out, talk it out until it's settled. Right. Being a healthy parameter of relationship, because I think a lot of times we're not taught that and we don't do that. We avoid confrontation or avoid hard conversations. And so it's good and healthy to talk it out until it's settled.
And I think the until it's settled, because we say a lot of times, like, well, just go and talk to them or go and see, just tell them how you feel or tell them that you've got hurt feelings or you didn't understand. But we never say, talk it out until it's settled. And that's something that I've had to learn, almost keeping it like an open-ended, okay, if you need to come back and you think of something else, or if this doesn't settle well, I'm open to continuing to talk until it's settled. And that means settled in you, settled in them, settled between you. And I think that's a skill that you learn over time, and it's worth it in the relationships where there's that mutual, we're going to talk it out till it's settled.
Yes. And I think that it doesn't mean when the sun goes down, because I think so many times if you're talking about hard conversations that are not going to be settled, and there are things that we agree to disagree on, right? Like there's things that I have an opinion, you have an opinion, we are not in the same camp and we know that, but we can be friends in spite of our differences. So like I look at the area of political arena, I would not spend my time talking it out until it's settled in that arena, because it's not going to be settled. But I think when it comes to relational, you hurt me, I hurt you, I feel wronged in this, that's the place where you talk it out until it's settled.
Right. Because settled doesn't necessarily mean I changed your mind or I convinced you.
Right.
That's not the same thing. It's I am settled inside of me. You are settled inside of you. And our relationship is settled. Yeah. It doesn't mean that we agreed on the same thing. It might be that we just agreed that we have discussed this.
Right.
And we agree to disagree. And I think that's okay.
Another thing that I love that you said was talking about keeping track of actual wrong, not keeping track of actual wrongs, but it's not talking about suspected or feelings, suspected wrongs or feelings or perceived wrongs. And I think it's so true that so many times in our head, we have this list of a way we've been wronged. And one, the person might not be aware that you feel that they've wronged you. And two, the perception or the situation is not somebody intentionally trying to hurt you. Therefore, it's not a wrong on their behalf if they're unaware of it, or if it was not something that was done in spite or in vain.
Right. Which I think is one of the reasons why I had said, listed one of those, be honest with yourself. Like that, be truthful to yourself, because sometimes you have to ask yourself, was this how I felt? Was this my perception? And being aware of when that changes inside of you. We have a thing at my house that Jason and I do, my husband and I, and if he says something, or if we're life is busy. I mean, we're going and things happen. Right. And if all of a sudden I feel a shift, like I'm just kind of like, get out of my way. Like I'm getting more like, I have to like stop and be like, hey, I have not had time to think about this yet. Something has happened and I've had a shift. I've had a change. So I'm just going to check it in with you and let you know that it's happening, but I'm going to come back to it. And that's me being honest with myself and being honest with him. Doesn't mean we have to talk it out till it's settled then, but it's also being aware of, I'm shifting, I'm changing, something's kind of set me off, but it's getting it out there so that I'm not like holding it, like, ooh, something happened, but I never know what it was. Like,
Yes.
it wasn't
Right.
an actual thing. It may not have been. It may have been. It may not have been. But it is, that's a good thing, I think, to practice even with ourselves when we notice, oh, I've changed even towards my kids or towards that person across the street or this, that, or the other, because it does affect how we then move into having discussions about actual real things that happen.
Right. Yes. Yes. That's so good. And there is so much skewed perception in our humanity that does not understand somebody's intention and wants to count it as wrong based on our own perception.
Right. And my brother good about saying, you know, there are his way, when I asked him about keeping a record of wrongs, and he just has a way of like succinctly putting it into this nice little package. And he said, it's not necessarily about the wrong because the focus really is about the love. And he said, it's more so about the, I'm going to love you always endearing. Like, as in that is going to overshadow what my thoughts are about the situation. I'm choosing the loving part more. It's going to weigh more heavy. And that keeps you really from getting caught up in all of the things that maybe might be, or the suspicions, or the maybe might be hurt feelings, or the misunderstandings. Because you know, in that relationship, I mean, Melissa, if you say something that I'm kind of like, I don't know that I really agree with that, or I don't see that, or I'm not sure. My first never, she's a horrible person. Like, it's never this anger thing, because my go-to is, I love her and I'm going to assume the best about her. It keeps you from assuming that it's intentional or the worst.
Man, and we've talked about that a lot in our relationship. And I know LD, my husband, and I have talked about it a lot. It took a long time in our marriage, a couple years, I shouldn't say a long time, a couple years in our marriage till we both realized, hey, when you wake up in the morning, you want the best for me. And when I wake up in the morning, I want the best for you. So things that happen along the way are not planned to tick you off. When I break something, which always happens, or you know, something happens that was not planned, it was not my intention because I love you. So please trust that it is, I want the best for you and I want to make life easier for you. And so I think if we can approach our relationships with the people that are in that circle of trust to say, if I know you want the best for me and I know you choose to love me, let me look at this through the lens of, was this intentional? What are they trying to say? Are they hurting? Are they in a place of their own bondage, baggage, misunderstanding? Because there's a lot of that just gets messed up in relationship because of what else is happening around the situation.
Right. And I think that also segues a lot very well into your post about how stepping in and guarding people from the danger that is obviously inherent with whatever they're playing with. You know, you play with fire, you're going to get burned. Just like you said, this whole, like, it's not only the not delighting in evil, because obviously we're not going to do that as Christians. We innately have this desire to notice evil and to not like it. That's kind of what happens. But we delight in stepping into that space and saying, because I assume the best about you, because I love you, and this is a danger, let me step in and help you. Like, let me help pull you out. And it's not assuming even that they're even aware of it sometimes.
Oh, I think most of the time they're not. Yes, most of the time it's, I'm trying to be healthy. So I'm setting up boundaries, or I'm leaving a friendship, or I'm leaving a job, or whatever, fill in the blank of something. And only your closest friends can you look in and say, I see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And I think you're too close to the situation. And what you think is healthy is not healthy right now. And I think we've lost the art of accountability. It exists in some Christian circles. I don't know if outside of Christian circles that word is even used. I don't want Christ to be the only reason I hold somebody accountable. I hold somebody accountable to the standard of what the Bible says, who is also a Christ follower with me. But I think even outside of those circles, there is a desire that I love you. I love a person enough to say, what you're doing is dangerous and it is going to cause destruction. Mm-hmm. And I think in our culture, we've allowed everybody's own truth and allowing everybody to believe whatever they want is like, you know what, if you're doing that and you're not affecting me, go ahead. And as a result, people are getting charred. I mean, mm-hmm. just getting burned. And by the end, everybody's trying to pick up the pieces when in reality, those close friends are responsible to say, this is leading towards destruction and I'm willing to pull you out because mm-hmm. I love you.
Right. Because, and letting that love lead, let it lead, mm-hmm. because even though love it sometimes hurts, it is the leading. It is why we do what we do. Mm-hmm. And I think, this goes into next week because it's love is rejoices in the truth. Right. It's also going like, it's the not assuming, it's functioning in this reality, admitting that there is a truth, that truth is truth.
Right.
Period. And it's loving somebody enough.
Right.
To not assume and to hold to the truth. And sadly, I think it is just like you said, this accountability is very much a lost mm-hmm. art.
Right.
I think it's a hard thing. I think it's not fun for anybody.
Right.
Or on the other side of the pendulum, it's abused and it becomes a battering ram. And then we're just, beating people while they're down. And that's not okay either, because that is not loving either.
Well, and I think it's showing up with this humility. You talked about humility and honesty in friendship. And if you show up in humility, it leaves you vulnerable. And mm-hmm. I think so many times when somebody wants to hold somebody accountable, they show up with an entourage. Mm-hmm. Let's all tell them why they have not shown up for me, instead of, hey, here's me, barren, vulnerable, to say, I want to hold you accountable, with the threat of rejection that feels crushing.
Right.
And nobody wants to do that. It's hard. It's too hard to say, I think that's worth it. And I think that's where a lot of our, especially through social media, through being able to mask behind any type of screen, mm-hmm. instead of look somebody in the eyes and say, I want to show up and be accountable for you with the risk of you rejecting me.
Mm-hmm. And it's just hard. But I mean, that's kind of
the point.
Pretty much. I was going to say, there's nothing, Jesus knew when he came, he would be rejected. That was the point.
Yeah.
It was to come to be rejected.
Yeah.
And because he loved. Like,
right. Our pastor said at church on Sunday, as long as you have breath in your lungs, this is what you are called to do. And he was saying, like, get over the rejection. And that's kind of one of those things that you're like, okay, I can have compassion and empathy. I can show up for people. But when it gets to the point of, no, I won't, because of my fear of rejection, it is kind of the like, that is what you are created for, to stand up in the face of somebody and say, I love you and I'm willing to be rejected because I love you. And that's hard, and it's against all things in society.
It really is. It really is. It goes against the flow of our own ego.
Yeah.
And then also of our culture.
Yes.
So it's very heavy.
It is. And we're so glad that you joined us, because, man, sometimes it just feels refreshing to have somebody say things out loud and know that, it is hard. Yes, it is not the flow of normal. It's going to feel awkward, and yet you're still called to do it.
So true. So true.
Yes. So join us next week again, and we're going to keep working it out. We're going to keep working out the details, and showing up for each other, showing up for others who want to step in and say, we want to love people well.
Exactly.
See you next week.